Good morning and welcome to Ed's World, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. I will be welcoming back one of our fan favorites and one of my favorite people to interview. Wyatt, welcome back to Ed's World.
Thank you, thank you.
How's your week been going? How was your holiday?
Yeah, week's been going fairly good so far. Like I was telling you earlier, I have a test tomorrow for history, but July 4th was pretty good day. We had a house party, I guess you could say, at our house in the afternoon. Once it got a little more bearable, because it's pretty hot in Texas outside. And then the fireworks were fireworks. They're always fun to look at. Uh, so yeah, I mean the whole holiday event was pretty good, but it was a pretty long week before then, I would say. But
Yeah, it's been kind of one of those weeks too, where it's just when the holiday falls in the middle, you feel like nothing else is you can't get anything done. I was like right on the edge of getting my Friday video out. I was a little bit behind the eight ball getting this scheduled out and ready to go. So I hope everything picks back up once we go back to a normal schedule. But we've got a pretty packed show going on today, and there's even stuff that has is just breaking now that we can't get to. I'm sure that you've been seeing all the Epstein stuff.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. I first saw it on Twitter. I think it was trending, and then I had read some articles on it, and that's pretty crazy stuff.
You think he's gonna commit suicide with a bullet to the back of the head?
I mean, I could see it because I mean, that's career damaging there. There's no getting around that.
Yeah. And he's got information that may lead to the arrest of the Clintons. That's
Oh
usually
yeah,
dangerous information to have.
yeah. You better go into hiding now.
And maybe the federal government will protect him somewhere here.
I wouldn't count on it.
But setting that aside, because I'll probably have to take that on to next week, we do have a full show going on today. As people who see my solo series already know, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez had a large amount of stories that involved her and the border. We'll go over a little bit of what happened there. We'll look at some of the pictures that we saw there, and we'll discuss what's actually happening going on down at the border and what people are saying is going on down there. The debates are over and the polls have shifted. We can get some look at some of the first numbers for there, so we'll be having a good look in 2020. The rest of the candidates have been kind of quiet, but Eric Swalwell put out a presser Monday morning making an announcement, so we'll discuss that just a little bit. Because of the holiday that we just previously discussed, there is a speech that we have to talk about. Apparently, there was a teleprompter error, and we were talking about airports back in the 18th century, so we'll talk a little bit about what happened there. There was a grand military parade, and that stepped on everybody on the left's toes, so we'll talk about where that came from and what the budget hawks had to say about the cost of that. Brand new CEO of Nike convinced the company to pull a sneaker that was supposed to be special edition off of the shelves for the 4th of July right before the holiday happened. We'll talk about what that means, why that happened, and what we are going to do from there. And to close out the show, one of my favorite YouTube accounts, Mini AOC, has been scrubbed from the internet. We'll talk about what happened there, why that happened, and what this means going forward for the rest of us who do independent commentary. It's going to be all of this and more on Ed's World. Thanks for taking the time to watch this on YouTube. If you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. That helps us move up the algorithms, and hit that like button because that lets YouTube know what people should be watching. Thank you for watching this on BitChute. If you haven't checked us out over there, it's always important to have an alternative media presence, so hit that like button over there and hit that subscribe button over there as well. If you're listening back to this on an audio platform, thank you again, and subscribe over there if you like what you're hearing. And if you're on iTunes, please leave us a 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the charts over there. Ed's World is proudly partnered with the Freedom Scoop Media Group, along with the Generational Gap and Stephen Ignoramus, and a contributing author who's sitting over here on the other side of the screen. Make sure you go over there and check us out. check out all the other great channels that are over there and check out the articles. We'll be taking some time and getting some more added as we go. After a lengthy introduction, it's always time to talk about the most important part of Ed's world. So, Wyatt, you're a returning guest and you've given us a bio before, but there have been some new subscribers since then. So, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Right, so I think last time we talked, I was still in high school. Actually, I know I was still in high school. So now I'm a graduate from high school, so no longer in high school. But I'm attending summer courses, so I'm a college student now. And I'm looking to be a teacher, probably in high school or junior high, that type of age range. And I was either thinking history or government, but I haven't quite decided which topic I want to teach yet. But in the future, I'll probably decide on that. But I'm also a YouTube creator, and I have my own Discord. And so my channel is called Roundtable Decision, and originally it was a school project, and that's where the Discord was from. And so I have like questions of the day and like some news topics and just some general conversations on my Discord, even though I didn't have a question of the day today, which I just realized. But I forget occasionally. But essentially, it was just to kind of think about topics more from a all angles and not just one angle. So, like my YouTube videos I do make, I try to keep all perspectives open and talk about which side, even though I might favor a side more. I still try to show what the other side thinks and how they got there. So I try to keep my videos more neutral. In my opinion, normally happens at the end, sometimes in the middle, but I like to cover like interesting topics, are bigger topics like mental health and guns, but also more like news type of topics. So I did ones on the Democratic debates and things like that. So I kind of do a mixture of things as far as YouTube goes. So
Now, you mentioned that your Discord server and then your YouTube page for Roundtable Decision was a school project, but you're obviously out of school now and pursuing a further education. So, what made you decide to keep going with this, and what made you decide to keep it going?
So, as a school project, there was a very interesting idea. What made me want to do it at the start. So, the school project was essentially a community service thing you had to make, and it could be a website, it could be a Discord, it could be a Facebook. It's something like an outreach, so to speak. So I picked my Discord project to cover like more big type of topics like mental health and talk about that and try to get conversations going. And so, long story short, once it kind of that project was over as far as school goes, I decided that I would keep it going because it still was interesting to me. And I was interested in more like political topics because, long story short, during school, they didn't really want me to talk too much about politics because that wasn't really what the project was supposed to be about. But obviously, now that that part of it's over, I'm able to talk about what I want to talk about and not have to be super restricted. So now it's blossomed more into what I've wanted it to be since the start, which is more of like talking about major topics what either I find interesting or what I think need to be talked about. So it's just kind of, it's something that's always been something I've always been interested in as far as that goes.
Well, we don't have a round table. We've only have a couple people here, but I think it's time to sit back and talk about what happened in the news this week. So to start, as we talked about in the topics, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had a lot of news talking about her and the border, and a news story that was almost a year old at this point that fell out of the media here. So to start with, Cortez last week or 2 weeks ago at this point almost, made an Instagram live video talking about the fact that we have concentration camps on the border. Now, this was obviously very politically charged language and it was meant to evoke a certain emotion. So, I know that you saw the fact that she was saying that this was supposed to be just a dictionary definition, but what did you think about the Instagram live video when you first saw that?
Right. So, as you mentioned earlier, it was something from a year ago as far as news related topics goes. But I mean, border control and like immigration is always going to be a major topic. So the story itself isn't necessarily old. But as far as when I saw the video, it left more questions than answers for me because I just thought it seemed rather uh, not as much information as it could have been. Like it seemed rather pandering towards like the topic and not necessarily like fixing the topic, I guess you could say.
Well, yeah, and that is something I want to get into later on this segment because there's been ample opportunity to fix the problem. That's one of the news stories that I want to touch on to that. But I guess, and I talked to Linda about this when this first happened, and we thought this was all going to go away after this because it fell out of the news so quickly the first time because it got debunked and it didn't fit the narrative. But yeah, she kept going, but the problem that I had with the original Instagram video, and I think that's what a lot of people had, was the fact that she said concentration camps with the intent, I think, I mean, I obviously can't speak for her, but I think she did that to try and get her fan base to think everybody who disagrees with her is a Nazi. I mean, when you say concentration camp, you don't think of the dictionary definition. You think about what you learned about in sixth grade history.
Right. And then obviously in the video she referenced never again, which is a common phrase used from that part of the Holocaust and related to World War II. And obviously she's denied that that's what that reference was, or that's what her video was referencing in the first place. It just seemed, that's what I was kind of talking about. It seemed if that was what she wanted to say, she did it in the wrong way. But if that is what she wanted to say, then why is she denying what she said? So it's kind of like, I don't get what really the message of the video was in the first place.
Well, obviously it was to try and bring attention to the fact that this was happening. And this was foreshadowing for a couple of things that did happen over the past week. Now, one of the first things that came out from this was as soon as the Instagram live video was over and the dust settled from all of this and the debates were over and we were paying attention to something else on there, this picture showed up on the internet. It was a picture of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez looking through a chain link fence with a very sad expression on her face. It looked like she was crying over the conditions over at the border. This was a staged event. I mean, it was a professional photograph to do that. And the first thing that anybody started talking about, of course, not any of the content or anything, was the fact that she was wearing a $10,000 watch in the photo. That goes to completely other things that we need to talk about in the form of campaign finance reform and congressional pay reform. But what did you take away from this picture when you first saw it? I don't have any video share or anything, but I talked to you off mic, and you know which picture I'm referencing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I know the picture, yeah. So when I first saw it, obviously my mind first went to what she was trying to do, or at least what I was thinking she was trying to do. And obviously it went to like the dot of immigration and the harsh policies within immigration, and that, these camps, what the U.S. has, shouldn't be there and shouldn't be made. And so those are my thoughts. And then I thought more about like what the pictures are trying to show. And like obviously she was very distraught in the pictures, or it looked like she was distraught. But on a closer look, it seemed rather almost fake type of pictures as well. Because, the parts where you would want to see tears, where she had like her hands over her eyes. So it's like obviously she's showing the emotion that she's crying, but in reality, you don't know. So it's like, it just seemed very shady. And it was similar to like her Instagram post or the live video we just referenced, where it just seemed wrong. Like I got a rather creepy feeling after a while from looking at those pictures, because the message was just not good.
The first article that I saw referencing this picture actually had me really, really confused, because the way the article was written, it seemed like they were trying to say that she was going down to visit the border before she was a congresswoman, because they had mentioned the fact she was congresswoman-elect. But no, this picture actually did come within the last couple weeks, and it was put out very quickly. But of course, internet trolls and 4chan users alike were very quick to try and debunk this, and they showed a different angle of this. Somebody must have captured something on a cell phone and it got leaked because, as you can see in this other picture, you've got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez hugging somebody with her back turned to the same fence she was just crying at, and all you can see is an empty parking lot.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I don't originally know how those photographs did get found. From what I've heard, is that they were the same photos from that photographer, and somehow they got leaked. Essentially, like I don't think he released those photos, or obviously he didn't. I don't. That whole part of the story is rather confusing. But long story short, the main thing was she's crying over a parking lot, which is very like it's almost laughable, really. Because when that came out, I was like, this is probably like okay. So when I first saw the pictures, I'm like, you know what? That's probably a blank lot. Like there's probably not even a camp there or anything. Next thing you know, the pictures come out and it's a parking lot. So it's like it's almost like the worst case scenario for what she was doing, and it's just yeah, it's not good.
Wait, did you just say you don't know how those photos came about? Have you never been on 4chan before?
Well, no. I Fortune is yeah. That's I've been there before.
I mean, these guys found Shia LaBeouf's hideout post-election by using cloud patterns.
There's some crazy people on there for sure.
I've heard people refer to it as weaponized autism, and I can't always disagree with that when I see some of the stuff that they're able to accomplish. They
Yeah,
are scarily efficient.
they're very good doxers as well for any like YouTube channel or person what comes out. Like I can't remember her name, but it was essentially she made these like really annoying videos, and I saw a YouTube video about Fortune and like what they did to like completely like dox her and find her information and where she lived and everyone related to her, and it was just like wow, it's a little creepy.
Yeah, people are so brazen to talk about 4chan so quickly, too. Do you remember the bridge videos that came out of Australia?
Maybe I don't remember it right now.
Some women on a kids show were talking about the privilege bridge and how white people can teleport across and anybody else has to swim through shark infested water. And then they made a reply after everyone called them out on the internet for it and said, you know, all you people, all you do is sit around on 4chan. I'm like, did you just insult 4chan? Are you crazy?
Yeah, that's not smart.
Yeah. Yeah, because photos like what we just saw came out from 4chan and the way that they use things.
Hmm.
Well, this wasn't the end of everything, of course, because Cortez and a few other Congress people, while they were staging this photo opportunity, were actually visiting a Border Patrol station, two of them, I believe, in your state. And, of course, the news had to come out because Cortez started saying many bad things about the Border Patrol agents. There were reports that she believed that all of the people that were sitting behind their computers chuckling wanted to get together and all fuck her. I don't know how much I buy of that, but that was one of the reports that came out of that. And of course, we had the world famous report, the shot heard around the world, that the women in these facilities were being forced to drink out of the toilets. Now, this is your neck of the woods, so I'll let you do some commentary on that and what you had going on with that.
Right. So I guess I'll approach it. So I'll start with the claim for the toilet water first, because that's the biggest claim out there as far as what she said, and then I'll talk about the Border Patrol agents himself. Well, I guess you could say yeah, I'll start with the toilet water. So, obviously, from those who know what the conditions are in the facilities, you essentially have the toilet part on the bottom and the water on the top. And obviously, there are different water connections because you're not drinking toilet water, as you might think you are. And so, from what I've been hearing a lot from people and kind of what one of my own thoughts was from hearing the story at the time, was that in general, if you were a third war person, like person who's not as well educated or doesn't know as much, might look at this contraption and think that you are drinking from, the toilet water because it looks like it's the same system. And obviously, I think that I could see that happening, but at the same time, I couldn't. I don't necessarily know if that was the case or not. But what I do think is likely is that someone talked to AOC about their dot, and that could have been their dot. And either it got mistranslated, because I know she speaks Spanish, but there's always capability that it got misheard or she used their words and twisted it, which I think is the more likely possibility. Because I don't think
No way.
anyone necessarily saw or necessarily someone she talked to did that. If that makes any like, I think she either completely made up the story or she took someone's word on it and either took it by heart, which I don't think happened, or she twisted those words, which I kind of already said, which I think is more likely that that was what happened.
Well,
And
I do
go on.
hope that I hope that you know this just from reading and not from experience. But I've been in the drunk tank and I've been in the overnight before in my life, and I've been in a cell, and it's not just what's happening at the border. I mean, if you're in county for the night because you got picked up and you're getting waiting to get released on bail, you're sitting in a little room and you have one of these contraptions. It's a stainless steel water fountain with a toilet bowl on the edge of it. And it is only one connection that's going to that, but yeah, it's fresh water that's going down in the toilet as well. It's the same water that's going into there, but it's clean, potable water. It's clean drinking water, whichever connection it goes to. So,
Yeah, I mean that's the big thing, and I don't know if you saw a video I think Blaze TV's put out, the network there. But anyway, they had a immigration officer or border control officer talk about uh, the conditions of one of these centers, and I don't know if that was the same center they visited or not. But
mhm.
essentially, if you take his words on it, he showed the toilet system and that each part of the system had potable water and one of those like I can't remember what coolers essentially they
Yeah.
had their own water that way. And then he talked about how they have food and toothbrushes and a bunch of other things what kind of came up with the visit as well. But going on the first claim you made about the officers, and I remember hearing that there was claims that there was like these private small groups with the officers online, and that they talked, like small talk or trash talk on these servers and just whatever. It's a weird claim to think. I don't think any of the officers really did say that, and if they did, it was probably more of a joking matter, and it just got taken serious, which she has the right to do. She has the right to take it serious because they were talking about her. But it's like there's a difference between like college humor or that type of humor and actually meaning what you're saying. And online that can be kind of confused because it's just text and words, and it's not as easy to tell if it's spoken. But a joke's a joke, and you can't take a joke as meaning that it's actual facts. So
Well, I want to take a look at this from the other side for a second here, because one of the other
mhm.
things that I found while I was researching this was the fact that many of the Border Patrol agents that were in that particular facility were also talking about the fact off or on the record that Alexandria Ocasio Cortez came in and was being immediately confrontational to the Border Patrol agents instead of the other way around. She came in screaming that they were Nazis, that they were fascists themselves, and she was even implying the fact that many of them weren't going to have jobs anymore in the very near future, possibly downsizing, possibly abolishing ICE. I don't know what she meant by that. It was never brought forward, but that's the claim that the Border Patrol agents are making.
Yeah, I've heard that claim as well for sure. And obviously we can't tell which one's true because we're not gonna know unless someone releases actual footage of what happened. And but generally knowing about her, I could see a mixture of the two happening because she's not exactly the person to uh, know when to keep her mouth shut. I guess you could say because she's very vocal in what she does. It's I compare her some to like Bernie Sanders in the way they talk because Bernie Sanders is very loud and very vocal, and so is AOC, but AOC does it in millennial type of ways, I guess you could say. She's more that type of person, and Bernie's more kind of the old man who needs to be in a shelter of some sort or nursing home. But no, but it's like obviously we're not going to know which one's more true or not. But I could see the threats of that happening as well.
Well, that's not necessarily true either, because one of the last points that I want to make on this before we move out of this into how we're going to change some of the conditions is the fact that there is a FOIA request that's out there right now. I'm not sure who filed it, but there's a FOIA request for whatever video closed circuit that they have going on to hear any other sort of recordings that they would have had from any of this, anything that would have been normally classified because it's a government agency. So
Right.
the information's actually going to get out there. I don't know if it's ever going to make it to the screens where we can actually watch it, but somebody's going to know what happened, and somebody's going to get to the bottom of this
I
before it
sure
gets
hope that's the
sanitized.
case.
Before it
Yeah,
gets
I sure hope
sanitized by
that's.
CNN and we don't see it anymore.
Well, yeah, that's probably already going to happen. Yeah.
I want to talk a bit about changing the conditions on these facilities because we had one more party that was involved with this. Boston manufacturer and online reseller Wayfair had a contract coming up to provide $200,000 worth of beds to a Texas based contractor. Now, it was found out by people digging that this contractor was working with the Department of Health and Human Services for the state of Texas, and these beds were going to be going to the Border Patrol facilities. And as soon as the employees of Wayfair found out about this, they circled a petition around Wayfair and they got 567 signatures in the first couple of hours. But they had a backup plan in place. Now, Wayfair ceased all activities immediately, but they were going to have a walkout if Wayfair did not cease because they couldn't walk away from that $200,000. Did you see any of this?
No, I didn't see too much of that story you were just talking about there. And but as far as border conditions go, or the conditions of these holding facilities, is I've never personally been to one, but since I do live in Texas, I do know people who have been border patrol agents or yeah, basically have been border patrol agents, and they've talked about how the conditions aren't necessarily perfect because they're trying to keep up with the demand, so to speak, and that they could be approved. And in general, I do think that an improvement, if that's a word, does need to be made for these facilities. But on a side note to the story and what you were just saying, that a weird thing about this whole thing is that AOC herself had the chance to vote yes to a bill that would give these facilities money, and she voted no. And you probably know about that as well.
Yeah,
But
that
it
was
just
the other
seems
point I wanted to make on this. But yeah, that's
you're
absolutely
right.
correct. The people that are complaining the loudest about the fact that these conditions are unsanitary, there aren't enough beds, that so much bad stuff is happening out there, have the opportunity to change that. Think of how many more people could have been housed comfortably if Wayfair had sent those beds down there. But instead, the employees didn't want to have any association with any of this, so they cried and whined until they got their way and they stopped it from happening, rather than providing for comfort for people who were in the facility.
Right.
And then, yeah, Cortez. Now, this is one thing that I do want to spend a little bit of time on because of what Cortez did, because the bill went back through Congress and it passed by margins that I have not seen out of this Congress. And I'm telling you, Wyatt, I did not think I was ever going to see these kinds of margins again out of anybody with the way that we've become polarized. But 305 to 105 passed the House and 82 to 10 passed the Senate before it got to the president's desk to provide $4.5 billion of border funding to help improve these facilities. And of course, one of the no's in the House was our favorite socialist representative, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who then went through and tried to rally through Congress to try and get more people to deny this. This is what they need to try and improve these conditions, and Cortez sat down and actively tried to prevent this, like you just said.
Right. I mean, it's a weird, almost like double life that she's living. The thing is, this could have happened if it was like, I don't know, 50 years ago, before social media was really out there. Because now everything she says and everything she does is tweeted out or someone says something. Because, a lot of these senators themselves are very active on these social media platforms, like Ted Cruz is for Texas. And, when AOC said something about immigration, I believe it was the first video we referenced and the video talking about the border conditions. But anyway, long story short, he made sure that people knew that she was the one who voted no to this bill, what could have provided aid, and that she's, lying to the public and what her message really is. So it's like, what she's doing is very weird because it's everybody knows what she's doing. Like it's not as secretive as it was before, and so it's like it's a weird thing to understand of why she's doing what she is. And real quick on that note, I think it was Ben Shapiro was talking about that in the photos with the parking lot and stuff. In her tweet she put out as well, she was referencing her feelings and things about it, but she was very careful on how she worded it to not put blame on her voting no to the bill. Is kind of what he was talking about. So it just seems rather weird.
Yeah. Yeah, these people actually absolutely have an opportunity to do this. And I mean, Shapiro continues to say the same thing, and I continue to say the same thing. You're Congress people, if you don't like, and you're in the majority party in the House of Representatives, if you don't like the laws, write a new one. That's your job. That's what you were voted to Washington, D.C. to do. That's what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you have the majority to do it. Because, like, obviously, you may not get every vote to pass a bill. I don't think there's ever been a case of getting all the votes for saying yes. And that's why, in history, when the government was first made and for the United States as one nation, we needed everyone to say yes to something, and it never happened. And that's why it became, chaos before it became good. So it's like, obviously, you're never going to get everybody to say yes to something. But if you really want change, and immigration is such a big issue, and you have the majority in the House, majority Democrats in the House who are leaning more and more progressive in thinking, you would think that you would try to pass a more progressive bill and hope that you get enough of the more moderate candidates to pass it through. Yeah. It just seems more logical than trying to vote no to a bill that helps. It seems weird.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. And I mean, it's the House of Representatives. They have the power of the purse. They get to decide where the money goes. So yeah, if you think the conditions on the border are squalid, do something about it. That's your job.
Mm-hmm.
But, and this goes back to what I was saying about how surprised I was by the margins that this funding package passed with, because I talked with Linda when she was on, and we were first talking about the concentration camp video. I think social media has made it harder for people to be Congress people and to find compromise. I mean, I do want to get your take on this because as a Gen Zer, you have had social media for almost your entire adult life. Hell, you've had social media available for your entire life because wasn't it MySpace started in 2000 and you were born in what, 01?
2000, yeah. I was born in 2000.
Yeah, so you've had social media available to you for legitimately your entire life. And I think a part of this is people go on social media and their voting records are put out there right away. People know what they voted for. It's very easy to find what the voter roll was for information, which it wasn't when I was younger, when I was first learning about government. So a person could compromise on a bill and it didn't necessarily get back to his home district until it was too late to do something. Now people know instantly who voted for what, and I think social media has made it harder to compromise because these people can go out there and vote yes for something that doesn't necessarily align with their party platform, and then they have to go home and face their voters almost instantly, and they'll possibly lose their job because of it. What do you think about that, given the fact that, again, like I said, you've had social media available to your entire life?
Yeah, I do see what you're saying for sure. Because like I just was saying earlier, that senators and representatives are more than willing to talk to another representative on a tweet or on a post and say negative things and bring light to how they voted. And I do think that social media in general has done more good as far as making sure that you keep these representatives to do what you want them to do, because
Mm-hmm.
they not necessarily by law, but they should follow what your district or what your people want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how it was set up. And that's how, because they're your representative, they're your person you put into government to pass what you want. But but to the other side of that, which you were mentioning earlier, is I do think that it hinders how much bills and how much middle ground does happen, because like you were saying, if someone votes yes on this bill and their people find out about it, they could, depending on what type of bill it is, they could be angered enough to start a campaign against that person, and it could end their career quite easily, depending on what that situation is, especially if it's a big topic.
Yeah, because we're not sending people to D.C. anymore to compromise and make laws and do what's best for the American people. We're sending them to D.C. by at this point to be combative with the opposing party and essentially fight with the other party and resist what they don't believe in and all or nothing for everything. And that's a really dangerous way to have D.C., I think. I
I
mean,
think you, I
go
think
ahead.
you're right for the most part. Yeah.
I mean, every Democrat that was up on the ticket this past midterm ran on ran on a platform of oppose Donald Trump. Every single one of them.
Yep.
I don't know what half of them stood for, and I watched a lot of campaigns.
Yeah, it's a weird thing for sure. It's what I've talked about for a lot of my friends and people who follow politics and or politics in general. But it's the of how these presidential debates are formatted to be, because it's not necessarily showing what their policies are anymore. It's more of a attack against each other to become the most well spoken or most rebellious candidate in some cases. Because when these debates first started, they were more policy driven debates, to try to understand what this person wanted for their campaign. And like you were mentioning earlier, now it's not really even policy driven, because obviously for these last debates they had a few questions, but many of the candidates didn't really even answer the questions, because you got to know more about their policies from the questions where they had them raise their hand, and you got to know the most about what they stood for by those questions more than what they actually said. And that's kind of scary for a lot of reasons, because it's like if you're only relying on a couple of questions where they raise their hand, it's you're not really knowing that candidate.
Hey, you leave the debates alone. I need my entertainment, and I need it from Washington, D.C.
They are entertaining. I will give them that. I do laugh.
Well, speaking of the debates, since since Border Patrol is an executive branch office, I think it's time for us to talk about the people that would like to become a part of the executive branch. So let's move out of the border here and let's talk about 2020. Now, this is going to be a small topic this time, of course, because the candidates have been very quiet. They're sitting here reformulating their strategy right now based on what they learned out of the debates, and John and I had a very lengthy discussion about what happened in the debates last week. It was so lengthy it caused my webcam to kick out. But there's one piece of breaking news that I want to hit before we go to anything else on this, and that for everybody listening to the show, it's Tuesday or later right now, but for Wyatt and I, it's Monday, which means this morning for both of us. Eric Swalwell came to the podium and announced the fact that he is no longer running for president, making him the first person to officially drop out of the race. Now, we all call Swalwell the nuclear representative for obvious reasons here, but I know you've had a busy day. You said, did you get to see any of this at all?
I didn't see his message of him dropping out, but any of the campaign news from Democrats who I've seen is mainly with Joe Biden, as he's been talking largely about Kamala Harris comments about the busing during the debates, and that he thinks it's not true or he knows it's not true, and then it's a lot of more of that type of stuff, and then Kamala standing her ground saying that that was what he was saying, but. So that's the only stuff I've heard from the Democrats really so far. I didn't really know about Swalwell till looking at the notes for this video here.
Well, that was the interesting thing, too, because I woke up instantly and I went to Twitter and I saw a lot of people starting to say that Swalwell was going to have a conference, but nobody knew what it was going to be about. However, the majority of us knew already the fact that he was going to be dropping out of the race. And sure enough, later on in the day when he actually had his conference, yes, he is officially out of the race. So we are down to 24 Democrat presidential candidates.
That's it?
And the first thing I have to think is, okay, what happens to all that money? Because he had quite a bit of money that was saved up just on, well, he had to have 65,000 donors just to get on that first debate stage, so... There are a lot of people that are going to have their hands out saying, hey, you didn't do what I wanted. Why don't you pass that back over here?
Or is he going to use the money to endorse someone else or something like that? Because when you're dealing with money as far as campaign goes, it's very, very sketchy almost because a lot of places from local campaigns will have you, once you donate your money, there's no like returns back, and they make sure you know that. But if that's the case for a presidential candidate like Swalwell, that could get a lot of publicity going his direction, and that could hinder his career quite a bit. Because obviously he stepped out of the race after one debate, so a lot of the people that was rooting for him or gave him money to pursue his campaign are going to feel that their money didn't really get used.
Well, it got used to buy that cool rainbow flag that he has waving 365 days a year, and was still had its fold marks on when he took the picture.
Well, of course.
But I mean, that's a little bit sketchy too when you think about campaign finance. I'm not 100% sure. I tried to look into this once when Bernie first dropped out of the 2016 race as to what campaign finance laws have to say about what to do with it. Because, I mean, if you're putting money in to try and support Swalwell's campaign, first off, you need to have your head examined. But second off, you're putting your money in so Eric Swalwell will use that money to run advertisements and go and run for president. And if he turns around and puts that into another campaign, I mean, you're kind of cheated out of your money at that point. Wouldn't you agree?
No, I would agree fully, and I'm not sure you even can do that because I'm not fully brushed up on what campaign laws are for as far as the money goes. But that was just the first idea I thought of when it came to that, because I think I've heard of people doing that before, where they've used that money to endorse someone else. I could be wrong, but campaign finances in general is just a very sketchy business as far as like what the money actually goes to, because you could say it goes to fundraising, but do you really know that it goes to, you know, these ads you see on TV, or does it go to paying for a private jet or something, you know, more not so useful?
Oh yeah, and I mean you're supposed to be using that to run around and make speeches and put your hands out and shake hands and kiss babies, or maybe it's the other way around. Or maybe it's to go out and buy that fancy nuclear weapon that you can drop on the dissenters. I mean, with Swalwell, who knows?
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of other people that need to do the same thing. There are a lot of people that, I mean, Styx has been saying for the last few days there are 5 viable candidates after the first debate. Everybody else needs to drop out, and I don't necessarily disagree.
I think they would be smart if they were to drop out, because I think that would make their voices be heard more. Because it was a crazy amount of people for the first debate, and obviously you didn't get to hear from several of the people very much, just because they couldn't have time to even speak that for any length of time, and that hinders your actual debates and what you hear from the people. So in short, having more people means that less information is getting is given.
Hmm.
So I do think that if they were to shrink the field, that it would make their candidates stronger as a whole and would make whatever candidates leading even stronger than it would be if they keep all these candidates going. And I'm not sure if it's going to have to be dropped out from their case or if the DNC is going to have to get involved and limit their chance to get hurt or something like that. And I'm not even sure that could happen, but it seems like a crazy amount of people to have any good conclusion come from it.
Yeah, it's just mainly a lot of leftists saying, I'm further left than the next guy right now, and screaming at each other, which I'm really kind of glad for the fact there are so many, because there are a lot of these people that have a lot of dirt on them that's going to come out, that's going to make them, it's going to make it very hard for them to retain their government seats that they have currently the next time an election comes around, because there's a lot of stuff that people are going to know about them that they wouldn't have necessarily known. I think we could thin the Democrat margin in the next election if a lot of these people stay in, but the reality is it's a really big waste of money if, I mean, one person's going to make it to the end.
Yep, only one.
And a lot of them are just getting out there and trying to make their names known or try to get their agendas pushed into the minds of people. Like Booker and like Swalwell, I think that they were both more doing this to get their gun control message out there than to actually run for the presidency. I don't think they thought they had a chance, especially in the DNC, who has a very big tendency to coronate who they want.
Right. That's why I was saying get involved
Yeah.
as far as that goes. But uh, it's a weird thing. It's definitely a weird thing. Because I was thinking, as far as the debates go, you had several people what I didn't even hear of before, like the author, as far as that goes. And obviously, we don't want to recap the debates too much because it's already been in the past.
Yeah.
But it's just like those type of people just seem so useless for even the average Democrat who's watching it. But another thing is, even though this was a much smaller case, you had John Kasich who stayed in the race with Ted Cruz and Trump. And a lot of people argue that Kasich, because he stood in the race for so long, took enough of Trump's votes to make the Trump end up winning that primary to go to the next election, the general election, then become president. So a lot of people are arguing that if Kasich were to leave earlier, that there could have been a alternative version of history where Cruz ended up beating Trump.
I
So
don't
it's
think
just like
I don't think Kasich has officially dropped out of the race yet.
I don't think he has. I heard that he was wanting to run again. It's like, no, don't.
Well, Hillary still hasn't dropped out of the race. Well, no, she did actually concede. Who is it that's still in the race? Stacey Abrams is still in the race.
Hmm.
The elections have been over for 7 months, but she's positive she's that winning governor.
I see.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how the polls have shifted since these debates, because a couple of things have shifted around. When we first went in, or when we went into the debates, rather, uh, Bernie and Warren were pretty much running neck and neck at the time. They were kind of sitting back and forth. Some of the polls showed one over the others. Other polls showed the other over the first one. But for the most part, once you got everything aggregated, Warren held a very, or sorry, rather, Bernie held a very slim margin over Warren. Now, Warren had been climbing very steadily in the polls as we were going along and going along and going along. She went from a 0% candidate up to being arguably the third place candidate and everything. But now after the debates, it seems first off that Joe Biden's numbers have dropped fairly sharply. But as of right now, according to Real Clear Politics, Kamala Harris is sitting in second place by the aggregation. Now, there are polls that show her down in fourth and some that show her up in second. But, I mean, for the most part, yeah, she's sitting in second as we're going along and aggregating everything. But I don't think that I don't think it's sustainable.
Yeah, polls are a weird thing because there's always been debate on if polls actually have their true value of what they say is that percentage or what they say is a true value. So just like if you talk about gun control, this amount of percentage of people are for this. There's always a weird thing that the people they're actually polling isn't represent the full amount of American population or the Democrat population. But in short, I do think that Joe Biden got hit pretty hard for what Kamala Harris did say for the blessing because he seemed rather timid in his answer, and I don't think that helped out his case because he had to know that that was coming, and even though it put him in a weird situation because Kamala Harris is a black lady, and if he were to outright diffuse what she was saying, he might come across as being racist or not not like accepting of her blackness, I guess you would say, or there's better words for that, but come across as being, mean, or I guess you would say. And I don't think he wanted to do that. But the way he approached it definitely hurt his campaign as far as the first debate went. And I think that made Kamala Harris polling go a lot higher. And I do think that the polling in general probably does reflect what the average Democrat probably thinks, I would imagine. Because I do think that Kamala Harris had a strong showing, even though I don't agree with what her values are. But I do think that the polling in general seems to be going on what I thought would happen from the debates, even though I think I would put Joe Biden as first, even if the polls don't represent that.
See, I look at Kamala Harris's numbers though because they were such a sharp increase. Is kind of what Fiorina did in 2016 after the first debate, where it was kind of a flash in the pan almost. Because Fiorina jumped up pretty high after that very first Republican debate in 2016, but she just fell apart after that. That was actually my first initial pick for 2016. I didn't get onto the Trump train until everything was almost over at that point.
Yeah,
But
no, go on.
I was going to say, I see almost the same thing with Kamala. I think she had a really strong showing. She was able to appeal to emotions and tug at heartstrings, but I mean, once policy starts going on the table and more people on the internet attack her for not being African and trying to be African or any number of other things that are going to happen to her, I think she's going to drop off the face of the earth. Whereas, like with Warren, who has just been steadily rising little by little and growing more and more, that's a sustainable growth.
No, you could definitely be right because the debates are very much spontaneous, and you're going to have the raw reaction from it, from those debates. So you could be right that that could just be a flashpan moment, and that she could go down from there, uh, which is possible. And I do think that what you're saying with Elizabeth Warren is somewhat true as well, because I can see her end up being the person they go with as far as what the end goes, because I think she's the one what's most reasonable for the Democrats and how the average Democrat is thinking if you align with what the party's going as far as that goes. But in short, I do think that Elizabeth Warren is going to be at the very end. Maybe not at the very, very end, but at the end as far as what these debates go.
Yeah, I'm almost afraid right now that they have her coronated like they did with Hillary Clinton. And the DNC is going to do whatever they can to try and bring her about. I think that's part of the reason she's had such a steady growth. Because she dropped like a brick after the DNA test thing, but yeah, it's just been climbing slowly and steadily. Yet, I don't know a single Democrat personally that wants to see her be the nominee.
Right. That's the weird thing about the Democrat Party as a whole, because you have YouTubers like Tim Pool talk about it occasionally, because he technically is a Democrat, or at least he still says he's a Democrat, even though in his latest videos he's kind of more weary about even saying that he is. Because I think the average Democrat person and average Democrats I know aren't aligned with the progressive agenda or the progressive candidates that the Democrats are going with or the DNC is going with. Because I think the average Democrat's more in line with, for example, like a more moderate candidate like Andrew Yang or can't remember his name now, but let's just say Andrew Yang, who has a economic philosophy I think Democrats align with,
Hmm.
but isn't as progressive as the other candidates because I think it's extreme to even the average Democrat, I would say.
Yeah, Yang is out. He's done.
I think he will be, yeah.
Well, we are pushing an hour right now, so we are going to have to keep things moving along. But before we close out 2020, I always ask my guests three questions based on what they've seen. And, now that we've had the debates and we've seen some of these people talk together here, the answers are starting to shift. So I'm going to ask you the first question, and that is based on statistics, based on the polling that you've seen, and based on the performance from the debates. And you've touched on this a little bit already, but who do you think makes it to the end and is the nominee for the DNC for 2020?
I think the person who makes it to the end, or at least the person I think's probably going to make it to the end, is Elizabeth Warren because I do think that somehow she's going to be the candidate they run with. But as far as debates go as a whole, to answer that question, who I think won the debate, even though a lot of people said Kamala Harris won the debate, I would argue that Joe won the debate. Joe Biden actually won, even though a lot of people said that he was the loser. Because personally, I think I would have him as the person who ends. But in short, I think that Elizabeth Warren will be the person who takes it to the end.
Well, a lot of people call Joe Biden a loser anyway.
Yeah.
So, in my next question, we have a what if situation. So, Trump can't make it to the presidency. Either he strokes out on the campaign trail or something else happens and the RNC can't put up a sufficient candidate to run against the Democrat in time, which could potentially happen. Out of the remaining 24 people on the Democrat field, who do you want to see as the next president if you have to have a Democrat?
Now that is a tough question for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, who would I want to see? Even though I don't see him going very far, I do tend to agree with some of Andrew Yang's positions, who I've talked about a little bit already.
Hmm.
I don't know too much about him, but as far as what I've listened to from him and what I've read on his campaign trails and things, I think that I would probably rather have Andrew Yang as president more than any of the others who I've seen, as far as what I know about him now. And I don't think that he would be the winner, but
So, my last question, throw what you want aside, throw statistics aside. For pure entertainment value, what's going to make you want to get the bowl of popcorn out and watch every single Lincoln Douglas debate against Donald Trump? Which candidate do you want to see for pure entertainment debating the Donald?
for pure entertainment,
Yeah.
I think I would like to see two candidates, even though that's not necessarily what's going to happen. But one of them's more of a practical candidate who I've already picked to go to the end, and that's Elizabeth Warren versus Donald Trump, because I think that would be pretty hilarious, and that actually could happen in reality.
Hmm.
And then my second one is more of Bill de Blasio versus Trump, because I just think his type of personality with Trump, oh, that would be a show to watch for sure.
Get the popcorn, crack open a beer, and watch two New Yorkers go at each other.
Hmm.
All right. So, speaking of the Donald and the fact that he is the president now, Donald Trump decided to throw a big parade to celebrate the military because the military was a big part of the reason that we have our independence in the first place now. Mind you, we didn't have a standing organized military at the time, but they've been in place to try and keep us independent as well. So he decided to have a big parade with tanks and flybys and guns and a great big speech. First off, did you watch the speech?
I watched part of the speech. I didn't watch the whole thing as I was doing some Fourth of July events myself. But I went live streamed on, I think on Twitter it was, what the broadcasts were. But yeah, I've listened to some of the speech, and a lot of people were arguing that it was very like scripted speech. It didn't seem from the heart or from what his own thoughts where he were about the situation. And I think I can agree with him some from what I've listened on. But I do like his approach that he was talking a lot about the history of the battles and how we kind of gained independence. And I do like that he took that angle as far as what his speech was, because I think that it's important for people now to know the history, because a lot of history is not taught or forgotten almost.
Well, yeah, and I mean this was a Stephen Miller speech, if I'm not mistaken, and that guy can either deliver a great speech or a complete bomb. There's no middle ground with Stephen Miller. There absolutely is not. But this, I think, knocked it right out of the park. But there was an issue while we were talking about the speech, and that was the first thing that was trending on July 4th into July 5th, and that's the fact that Donald Trump, in his speech, insisted the fact that while we were going through the Revolutionary War, we took the British airports. And that caused a lot of controversy on both sides of everything and caused a lot of people on both sides to be essentially at each other's throats. Now, Trump calls this a malfunction due to the rain. Possibly the screen flickered and he had to go off script, or something blotted something out on the teleprompter and he couldn't see that. But what did you think about that when you saw that, or at least the news behind it?
Yeah, I didn't watch that one live, but I did see the news and the Twitter reaction from it because it was a pretty big deal as far as that went. But after watching the clip itself, I was rather, I wouldn't say impressed with if that was the case because he was in a very weird part of the speech. So if it did flicker out or go blank, what he did say, although seemed a little weird in nature, it was one of the better things that I could think of because I try to put myself in that situation because you never want like awkward silence in radio or speeches or anything as far as that goes. But I don't really get why there was so much attention drawn towards the mess up or what actually happened. Now, obviously, it was kind of more of a funny event, but when I first saw it, I just thought it was something they were trying to knock Trump off for, just to knock him off, because that seems to be the common media media thing to do. But I mean, I wasn't necessarily too angry about what he did or too annoyed or anything as far as that goes.
Yeah, and I mean, if everything went off, then, I mean, he improvised. That's what he did. And maybe he got the facts wrong. I mean, obviously, there were no airports in the 18th century, but yeah, I would challenge anybody else that was criticizing him to try and come up with something on the spot back there. Just the same.
Exactly. That's what I tried to do when I first saw it because it's like anything I could think of was much worse than what he actually said, even if it was a wrong event, which it was, because as you just said, there was no airports at that time, or far from the first plane would even got made. So
Yeah. Let's talk about the parade itself, because even before the speech happened, there was a lot of criticism on our president based on the fact that he decided that he was going to have tanks and jets be a part of the parade, and a lot of people said, "Well, this is what tin pot dictators do." Now, to look back in history, we actually have a very rich tradition of having our military might on display when we celebrate our military, or even in a parade. I mean, Even the VFW members carry dummy rifles when they're marching in a local parade. So I don't necessarily see where this was a problem. Not to mention the fact that, as Styx would say in his videos, tanks are fucking cool.
Yeah, I could like trying to understand what the side for like what dictators would do. A lot of arguments I heard were that dictators tried to show the army's strength to show that they're in power and you need to listen to what they do and everything they do and blah blah blah. That was more their type of claims. But in reality, Independence Day and what it stands for is to show America and how we need to be prideful or we need to respect what the founding fathers and people before us have done for the country. And military strength is one of the ways of doing it because as a nation, our used to be as a nation, we are very proudful for our military and very respectful for what they do and what they do every day as far as that goes. And, the fact that he brought tanks for me was more of a cool factor and something I liked that he did, even if it costed a lot of money and so on. I do think that it's a very cool way of showing the average American or the American who was there in person or on TV to show something was so big and so military. Because let's face it, every boy at some point has probably played with tanks or military or thought they were a soldier at some point. So it was just kind of a cool factor that he was having tanks for this parade celebration.
Yeah, and we got to see the B-2 bombers, which are stealth bombers, on display for one of the first times as civilians, because those usually don't get drug out and paraded about. So, I mean, we got to see a lot of the tech that we're paying for. That's a big part of this too. I mean, we all own this equipment already. We paid for it as a nation on the whole, and we get to see it on display and actually see things. But a lot of the budget hawks out there were also talking about the fact that, every flight that went by, every flyby that the Air Force did was costing billions and billions of dollars, which, yes, it's true. The fuel, to have the personnel on there, to, every time you turn on that plane, you're spending a couple grand just to start the thing up, essentially. But, I mean, all of these people were on duty. They were getting paid anyway. And we own everything.
Right. Yeah, that claim was rather ridiculous in my opinion because I think, as I said earlier, that it's supposed to show America as being prideful of military is one way of doing it. And although it may have been really expensive, it's something you can afford to do as a nation on your Independence Day because he's not doing this every week or once a year. Well, he is doing it once a year in theory, but not like 3 times a year or something where it's more than what it needs to be. Because if you only do this once, yes, it costs a lot of money, but you're also doing it to not necessarily show your power like some of the people were talking about. It's more just to show the average American what America has or why we should be proudful of the military through what America has through tanks and like the stealth plane you referenced and other components of our military because all the flyovers were really cool. I think that was probably the highlight of what I saw from it because Stephen Ingaramus had some videos in his flyover videos what he had I thought were pretty cool.
Yeah.
What I referenced from that. So it's something you can afford to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is I mean all these budget hawks out there are talking about how much this all cost, and I mean, for God's sakes, they're talking about a couple $1 million for one celebration that everybody is coming down to see. I mean, people from all over the country were coming to see this. The 4th of July is a huge tourism day for Washington, D.C. on top of it. And the fact that it was announced that we were having this event. I mean, I bet you thousands of more people, maybe even 1 million more people came down just because this was going on. That stimulated the local economy of Virginia, Maryland, and D.C. itself, I'm sure. Plus, I mean, These same people were proposing a $93 trillion bill to restructure the economy entirely that was going completely unfunded, and yet they have a problem with the fact that we're spending a couple $1 million to incite some pride in our nation and try and celebrate the fact that we're an independent nation.
Right. It's a rather weird claim that I saw a lot on Twitter and more than I recently noticed. And maybe that's because I'm more politically aware than I was in the past. Where there just seemed to be a lot of hate towards like what America is or what America has done on the Independence Day itself. Because it's just really weird to me that people would say that, since the founding fathers owned slaves, that we didn't end slavery when we should have, therefore we're a bad nation. It just seems rather harsh to judge a nation over its past as the United States did. It just seems very weird or very un-American to judge the nation over that type of thing on its Independence Day, where you're supposed to be happy for what America is.
Well, I think you just set my next transition right up for me here because going on the idea of slavery, what happened back in the 18th century, and what happened for our current Independence Day, new Nike CEO Colin Kaepernick, and I call him that because he seems to be calling all the shots over there, sent a message out to Nike to say that they needed to pull a shoe that they were about to release as a limited edition for the 4th of July because it featured Betsy Ross's flag, and that flag flew while America was a slave-owning nation. Now, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of whataboutism, but I saw the photos from Obama's inauguration, and there were two of that Betsy Ross flag hanging behind him the second time that he went up and gave his inaugural speech.
Yep, that's been referenced a lot
Yeah.
over the past couple of days, what I've seen. And it's a rather uneducated perspective as far as the Betsy Ross flag goes. Because that was the first flag of the United States, which I'm sure everybody knows who's watching this video, or at least hope you know.
Hmm.
And obviously, Betsy Ross is a woman who made the flag. So, if anything, you think that he wouldn't want to take a flag what was made from a woman, or at least designed by a woman, or thought of by a woman, away because that's their type of stance, or at least I think that's their type of stance. So that's a whole nother issue. But as I mentioned earlier, some founding fathers did own slaves, and that was his claim for that they shouldn't make this shoe or shouldn't sell this shoe. But also, on the other hand, there was many founding fathers or decoration signers who didn't own slaves and who opposed slavery. And I mentioned in a tweet on Independence Day itself that Benjamin Rush, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, opposed slavery, and he written many of articles or many of books at the time that said that blacks had the same intelligence as whites, and that in order for our nation to be what we want it to be, we need to end slavery. So there was a lot of inner conflict at the time about slavery. It wasn't like every founding father wanted slaves to be in the nation and wanted them to have slaves. So it was a very hot topic. So it just seems rather uneducated that you think that this flag stands for slavery just because half the nation, if it even was half the nation, had slaves or was pro-slavery.
Now, I want to get into a little bit of the tinfoil on this because there was a little bit of that came out. There are people out there that are saying that this was nothing but a publicity stunt, a PR stunt, to try and drive the value of these sneakers up. Now, they were on the shelves. The stores that were selling them were getting ready to get them, and they were expensive sneakers to begin with, but they were getting ready to sell, and they suddenly got pulled from the shelf. But I was also seeing sources that showed that some of these sneakers now were going for almost $2,000 a pair. So I don't know if this was a way to try and drive up sales and try and drive up demand for these, to try and drive some of the right to try and get their hands on these because they were contraband to the left and maybe try to own the libs. But what did you think about that, if you heard any about that?
I did hear about that, and there's a lot of claims of people who mention things. And going back in time, even not that long ago, you had like Gillette with their advertisement for shaving, and that they they thought a lot of people would. Okay, so let's put it this way: a lot of the left are skeptical type of crowds say that companies like Nike and Gillette make these type of ads because they know they're going to get a lot of attention from it, and that attention is going to drive up sales. And in some ways that's true because you have the common phrase where any publicity is good publicity as far as business goes. But on the other hand, I don't necessarily think that's true all the time. And there could very well be a possibility that Nike, instead of selling a lot of these shoes, because I think they were limited release anyway, they decided to make this controversy to drive the limited amount of shoes even pricier. Because as far as what I can tell, is these shoes weren't released to like every store like Academy would have them, a couple of pairs. It was more of a limited release for each store. So yes, each store might have it, but they wouldn't have as much. So Nike could have made up this controversy to drive the prices up for each shoe, but at the same time, I don't think that that's a smart long-term investment for a business to make, because any of these controversies, although they might make you some quick cash, aren't going to make you long-term cash.
Well, and the thing of that too is, I mean, when this all popped out, Arizona decided that they were going to renege on the tax incentive that they had given to Nike to have a factory in the state of Arizona, which California turned around and said, hey, you want to bring those jobs over here and bring that income over here? And I don't necessarily like the idea that that a company's political position is going to affect how it gets its tax incentives and what states it's going to go into. But on the other hand, I guess the states have to decide what they want to decide as long as it's not coming from federal level. I don't know if you saw anything about what was going on with that.
Oh, yeah, I saw a little bit about that, and then I saw that the governor was wearing Nike shoes at his event. So a lot of people are making fusses about that he was wearing these Nike shoes when he said he wasn't going to endorse Nike anymore. But that's a different claim in itself. I just don't think it's a smart investment in the long term for these companies to do what they're doing. Because if they want to move to a certain state, like California, they could already do that necessarily. And I don't think that this publicity helps them in their moving process.
We are getting some major video lag here. I don't know what's going on here, but I know you're moving a lot, and I'm lagged a little bit behind on video. I don't know if you're caught up yet or not.
No, I think I'm caught up. I have to plug in my computer.
Oh, did I lose audio?
Can you hear me?
I have audio. Okay. I thought I lost audio on there for a second here.
Yeah, I had to move my computer to plug it in. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, we are running a bit long, so that's understandable instead. I got one more topic here, and it's going to be a little bit of a quick hitter here. Well, I do think we need to sit down and discuss what's going on here because we are all independent commenters, and we all maybe face the wrath of the left, but there was a YouTube account and a Twitter account called Mini AOC, and it was probably one of my favorites. A young Hispanic-looking girl would dress up like AOC, mostly at the direction of her parents, and read scripted lines making fun of the freshman congresswoman from New York. There were a lot of funny clips out of that. One of the things that she said was the fact that she called it the Green New Deal because she was still learning her colors, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. But in true fashion, the left found out about this, and Cortez's fan club across the country found out about this as well. And they started to search the internet and found out who this girl was, what her real name was, released it on the internet, and people started calling the family's personal cell phones, sending mail to their address, and giving them general death threats. And there are other reports out there as well that it's possible that some people had contacted the father, the mother, or both's employers, and the employers threatened to fire them if they didn't cease and desist on this. Now, first off, what kind of a mind is it that decides that it's a good idea to go after an 8-year-old girl?
This isn't the first case that it's happened either, because I don't know if you heard about the controversy with Minnie Soph, or Soph, I think her name is.
Yeah, so.
Uh, Soph, that's it, yeah. Because she got harassed by the left and got her channel taken down for a while with her video of Muslim terrorists, I think it was, just kind of a mockery of that event or that type of person.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you get to the mini AOC, who is what you said is a young. Also, I think you said she was 9 or
She's 8.
8. So I think they're around the same age. I think Soph's a little older.
Soph
but
is 16. She's at
Oh,
least
she's
the age of
16.
reason, rather.
Oh, never mind. She looks much younger. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, so these people are not afraid to attack or harass these younger non-consent or non-18-year-olds as far as their content goes. And obviously, I think this is wrong in many ways because obviously we have the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and what she's doing, because I looked at some of her videos before we started this, isn't necessarily anything I think what is wrong or hate speech by any means, or as far as that goes.
Well, and the thing about that, too, I mean, when the mother decided that it was time to scrub the internet of the content, which I am on the fence as to whether or not I agree with the fact that they were using an 8-year-old girl to give the message. I mean, it was funny, I enjoyed it, but the fact is that, yes, she was 8 years old. But the mother did give a strongly worded tweet that, first off, she deleted all of the other tweets on her account and left one tweet on there to explain what had happened. And I'd like to read that on the air right here. I have it up on the screen. And it says, Ava will not be doing any more mini AOC content. The left's harassment and death threats have gone too far for our family. We have been getting calls on our personal phone numbers. For our safety and for our child's safety, we have deleted all mini AOC accounts. And that's the last message that we got from this family.
Yeah, I can't say that they're necessarily wrong for doing they're doing with a minor daughter and their own daughter that matter. And obviously they could be concerned for her safety, as these people are more than willing to go across the boundaries as far as that goes. And this isn't even the first case as far as YouTubers go, because the person who was on Avengers, what was the last movie? Endgame. They had Tony Stark's daughter who got harassed by the left for some of her content she makes on Instagram, which her mother runs her Instagram. But in short, they were attacking her as well, and I believe she's 12. So age doesn't matter for the leftists or for people who find content, because I do think that these people are all the same type of people who go after these young content creators who have somewhat of a controversial opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you brought up Soph, and that's a really good idea because, like I said, Soph is at least of the age of reason, and her parents are stark leftists, so she's very independent on her own, and she's doing her own content. She's doing all of this herself. From what I understand from the mini AOC account, Ava was pretty much given a script and told how to deliver it, which she was very good at her delivery. But the fact of the matter is, when it's a political figure, you should not be putting a child up, especially not your child. Let me give you an idea of how I feel about involving your family when you're doing something political. Last summer, I had to spend some time at my mom and dad's house because a woman who was very close to me had passed away, and I needed to be up there to help help the family grieve and to be a part of the funeral. I was a pallbearer to the funeral. So I took a week off from work and I spent time up there. But while I was up there, I did continue my solo video series. My mom had set me up with a little place where I had some background. I had a dresser in the background and some other decorations up there, but while I was setting all of that up, I noticed that my dad had a plaque from his work that was celebrating all of the years that he had worked there. And the first thing I did as soon as I saw that was I turned that face down because my mom and dad did not sign up for political commentary. I did. And I have no right to drag them into that given the fact that they did not sign up for that. And I really feel that Mini AOC is in the same boat. Like, she didn't sign up to put her parents' political agenda forward. She just wanted to read funny lines and make fun of a congresswoman who probably has a lower mentality than she does.
Yeah, I think you're very. Yeah, it's a weird situation if depending on how involved she was, because obviously you said she was reading the scripts and acting out the events of what her videos were, but at the same time she's not of age of reason, and so obviously her parents could be making her do it, and that she's not doesn't necessarily want to, and that's a different type of story. But as far as like Soph goes, who is of age of reason, and what her videos were, it's a whole different conversation because with her, her, as you said, her parents are leftists, but her parents let her do what she wants because they believe in the First Amendment. Or at least that's what Soph has said before. So her content is her own content. I think she has like one friend who like helps her a little bit as far as editing and things like that go. But most of like her dots and things are her own dots. And I don't know if you can necessarily say that for Mini AOC, but if you say that she does want to do it, then you're basically doing the same thing, even if she's not of age of reason.
And that's the other side of it too, because this is only going one way. I mean, yeah, you have your rabid MAGA fans who want to boycott everything that Alec Baldwin does, that boycott the late night shows on network television because all they do is sit around and make fun of the Donald. And I've met some of the MAGA people on Twitter, and I'm sure that there's hate mail that goes along with some of that as well. I'm sure some of them have told people like Jimmy Kimmel and Alec Baldwin, hey, you better stop this or else something bad's going to happen to you. I'm sure that that's happened, but yet again, these people are protected day and night by armed security, and they can get out and do everything they can to make fun of W, to make fun of Trump, to make fun of just about any person on the right that they want to. But we have a rabid band of people who are going to target an 8-year-old girl based on the fact that she's making fun of their sacred cow.
Yeah, it's as you said, because I don't see any leftist person getting removed from YouTube or as far as that goes. And obviously this, the MAGA hat Trump supporters who are the opposite of what the people who remove Mini AOC and Soph, they could be doing it more from a personal perspective through like hate mail or actually like one-on-one conversations. But you don't see a neutral treatment as far as content creators go on YouTube. And that is becoming more and more of a problem because, censorship is starting to be a really hot button topic more than it has in the past, even more than other topics that were before. Because some people could say that censorship is more important than another controversial topic like abortion or gun control. Because I've talked to people where censorship means more to them than any of those issues do.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I have one last question for you on this topic. Let's fast forward 10 years. What do you think Ava is doing after the Mini AOC is done and after she's experienced that? How do you think this affects her growing up, and what do you think she's doing at age 18?
I think it can go one of two ways. Either you probably won't see her uh, doing videos or content things at all, and she's rather living more of a normal life. As in 10 years, she probably won't have any of this going on in her life, or she'll be the opposite and be rather angry with what happened, or at least take advantage of it when she gets older and make videos and become more and more. Obnoxious with what the video she makes, so more and more bold as time goes with the type of videos, and at that age she would probably make it herself, or at least I would hope she would make it
Well, yeah.
herself. So I mean, I could see it going one of those two ways, and I don't know her that well, but I could see the second option probably being more likely with how social media is today.
Well, and generationally too. I mean, your generation is more apt to do something like that, to try and put yourselves out there to be the next YouTube star than anybody in my generation. Because when I was your age, if you wanted to be on a screen for anything, you either had to go to journalism school or you had to strike it big as an actor. And YouTube and independent media in general has changed that, and it's not just in the news cycle. It is in regular entertainment. I've seen TV series that have sprung up that have no studio backing behind them. It's just a bunch of kids got together on YouTube and they're doing better than some of the Netflix shows that are out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of large content projects what are happening
Yeah.
because there's parts of like The Last Jedi what YouTubers have got together and like remade scenes from as content creators, and they're like way better than what the actual movie was. So
Hmm.
you're just seeing a lot more of this like entrepreneurial attitude and wanting to become the next thing. Because, like you mentioned, that people wanted to become an actor. I think a lot of people now want to become the next Instagram star or the next YouTube creator. That's their biggest goal now.
Yeah, because that's one of the differences when you go onto an independent platform like BitChute or YouTube is the only gatekeeper is the quality of your content. Whereas, when you were in Hollywood or when you were going to try and work for MSNBC or Fox News, you had the gatekeepers. You have to look this way, you have to act this way, you have to be friendly for our sponsors, or you have to toe an agenda, or you have to act this way to get into Harvey Weinstein's room to make it onto the screen. It's a stark contrast as to what we had just 10 years ago.
Hmm.
But that's all that I have for content for the day. But of course, we always ended on a dark note, and now we have to turn around and end it on a light note. So, one of the last questions I always ask my guest is to describe a hobby that has nothing to do with work or school or politics. It could be an album that you've just picked up, or an instrument that you've been playing, or video game you've tried out, just something that helps you unwind from all of this angry world. So, tell us a bit about what you do to unwind.
So for the most part, is even though I follow a lot of politic channels on YouTube, I do watch a lot of like content shows you were mentioning before. So I do listen to a lot of YouTube to kind of unwind from school and other things. But I also gotten into writing as a hobby, sort of.
Hmm.
So I'm planning out this like novel-ish type of thing I wanted to write for a long time. And it's this program called Campfire, which helps you like organize characters and scenes and things. So
Okay.
essentially, I've been planning out this novel or writing parts of it for in my free time to kind of just zone out of everything because it can become quite hectic and hard to get away from occasionally. So that's what I've been doing a lot recently is just kind of planning the novel and writing parts of it.
And we'll be definitely looking for that. I want to take some time and thank the audience for tuning into this. If you'd like to finish the conversation with me, you can find me over on Twitter. That is at edsblogtwitter. Or you can email me, edsblogtwitter@gmail.com. Or you can find me over on freedomscoop.com as well. If you want to finish the conversation with Wyatt, tell us where they can find you.
The best bet is probably either going to Roundtable IB on Twitter, and I have all my social media links there for all my other platforms I'm on, and I'm also getting more active on Twitter, so you can engage me there. But also, you can on my YouTube channel, Roundtable Decision, you can find my Discord, or like I said on my Twitter, you can find my Discord. And like I mentioned earlier, I tend to have questions of the day and just conversation going on Discord as well. So if you have Discord, you could find me on any of those, and I'm very active on Discord to continue this conversation or any other conversations you might think of. And as far as Discord goes, I've opened up a tab where you can mention like videos, what I can do. So I'm starting to want to involve my fans even more. So if you want to get involved that way, you can join my Discord and recommend some things you want people to talk about.
As we mentioned before, as along with all of this, which will be linked in the description below, while you're going down to check that out in the description below, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the like button if you're on YouTube or BitChute. Once again, thank you if you're listening to this on an audio platform. We are on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And if you are on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the algorithms and helps us reach out to more people. Finally, you can find us over on Freedom Scoop, and Freedom Scoop is opening calls for new writers. Wyatt has submitted articles to Freedom Scoop, and we're looking to round out our field. If you are interested in writing, please reach out to me, adsblogtwitter@gmail.com. I'll get you a topic for a sample article, and I'll submit it over to the editor-in-chief, and we'll see if we can't get you a spot on there. As we always say on Ed's World, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Wyatt, you have last word.
Yep, thank you. I would say that you could follow me on any of the social media platforms I said earlier, but also if you're looking for any new TV show to watch or anything like that, I would recommend watching Impractical Jokers if you just want to laugh, because I just thought of them. And they're essentially a comedic channel on True TV, and they just do these random things with people and try to get them to do something stupid, so like poke their nose or something crazy. So just if you want to laugh during nothing really to think about, you could watch that show. I would highly recommend that. And thank you.
Take care, everyone.